Before we begin, if you've ever felt caught between joy and tension, between love and misunderstanding, take a moment and stay with this story. Because what you're about to hear isn't just about fame, headlines, or a powerful family. It's about emotions we all understand. Feeling left out, wanting to be seen, and trying to protect your happiness when everything around you feels uncertain. The internet isn't just talking, it's exploding. Everywhere you look, comments, videos, conversations, people are trying to piece together what really happened. Because what started as a beautiful, heartwarming moment quickly turned into something far more complicated. At first glance, it looked perfect. A glowing announcement, a growing family, a love story continuing exactly the way people dream it should. Smiles, excitement, celebration, everything felt like a fairy tale. But sometimes, the most perfect pictures hide the most uncomfortable truths. And this is one of those stories. Because behind that single moment, the one the world saw, there was another story unfolding quietly. A story filled with pauses, glances, unspoken words, and emotions that didn't quite match the celebration. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's go back to the beginning. Before the cameras, before the post, before the world knew anything. There was a room. Not a stage, not a set, just a private space. A family gathering. The kind of place where people are supposed to feel safe, honest, real. No audience, no filters. Just truth. She stood there holding something big, something life-changing. You could feel it in the air even before she said a word. There was excitement, but also nerves. Because sometimes, sharing good news is harder than sharing bad news. Why? Because you don't just hope people hear you. You hope they feel it the same way you do. And that's not always guaranteed. "I need to tell you something," she said softly. The room shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to feel it. Everyone paused, conversation stopped, eyes turned toward her. And then, "I'm pregnant." Silence. Not the peaceful kind, not the calm kind. The kind of silence that stretches just a little too long. The kind where emotions are trying to catch up with reality. And then, suddenly, everything moved at once. Excitement burst out, reactions followed, smiles appeared, hugs happened. It looked like joy had taken over the room. And for a moment, it had. But only for a moment. Because not everyone reacted the same way. And sometimes, it's not what people say that changes everything. It's what they don't. There was a pause. Small but noticeable. A reaction that felt careful instead of natural. Measured instead of emotional. And in a family where emotions are usually big, loud, and impossible to miss. That quiet moment stood out. It didn't match the energy. It didn't match the moment. And even though nothing dramatic was said, everything had already started to change. Because when one person feels something different in a room full of shared emotion, that difference grows. Slowly, quietly, but powerfully. At first, it stayed under the surface. Smiles continued, conversations moved on, the moment carried forward. But underneath, questions were forming, feelings were shifting, and tension was building. Because here's the truth most people don't talk about. Big life moments don't just bring happiness. They reveal everything else that's already there. Old feelings, unspoken frustrations, moments from the past that were never fully resolved. And suddenly, this wasn't just about a baby. It was about everything. Later that day, away from the group, something changed. No audience, no distractions. Just two people. And honesty. The kind of honesty that doesn't sound soft. The kind that comes out sharp, direct, and a little emotional. "You didn't tell me," came the question. But it wasn't really a question. It was a feeling of being left out, a feeling of being the last to know. And in families, especially close ones, that matters more than people admit. Because knowing first sometimes feels like being valued more. And not knowing feels like distance. The response came quickly, calm but firm. This is my life. And just like that, the line was drawn. Not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. And once that line is there, it's hard to ignore. What happened next wasn't just a disagreement. It was something deeper. Years of emotions rising to the surface. Words that had been held back, finally being said. You always do this. You make everything about you. And then the response that changed everything. For once, it is about me. That wasn't just a reply. That was a release. A release of frustration, of feeling overshadowed, of wanting a moment that didn't belong to anyone else. And in that moment, this stopped being about one announcement. It became about identity, about space, about being seen. Other voices stepped in, trying to calm things down, trying to bring the focus back to what mattered. This should be a happy moment. And they were right. It should have been. But emotions don't follow rules. And once they're out, they don't go back easily. Then came another layer. Something no one expected. Timing, not emotional timing. Business timing. Plans, projects, attention, focus. Because in a world where everything is scheduled, managed, and strategically released, even personal moments can feel like disruptions. And that question, whether spoken directly or simply felt, changed everything. Did you know what this would do? That implication, that maybe this wasn't just a personal moment, but something that affected everyone else, created a silence no one could fix. Because how do you respond to that? How do you explain something that was never planned that way? And more importantly, why should you have to? After that, things didn't explode. They didn't fall apart in a dramatic, visible way. Instead, they went quiet. And sometimes, quiet is more telling than chaos. From the outside, everything looked normal. Smiles, posts, messages of support, perfectly written captions, carefully chosen words. But people noticed, because when something feels slightly different, even if you can't explain it, you feel it. Shorter messages, less emotion, a tone that didn't fully match the moment. And then, the detail that made everything louder. Not everyone showed up. And when people don't show up to something important, it says more than words ever could. Speculation grew. Questions spread. What's really going on? Because deep down, people understand something simple. You can't fake connection. You can only present it. Meanwhile, distance started to grow. Not in a dramatic way. Not with announcements or explanations. Just space. Time spent apart. Energy redirected. Focus shifted. And sometimes, that's how separation begins. Not with a big moment, but with small choices. Repeated quietly. Another gathering. Another chance to reset. To reconnect. To bring things back to normal. The conversation started light. Safe topics. Easy laughter. Everything felt like it might finally settle. And then, one question. Simple on the surface. Heavy underneath. Are you ready for this? And just like that, everything froze. because that question wasn't really about readiness. It felt like doubt, like judgment, like questioning a decision that had already been made. And in a moment that was supposed to feel supportive, it felt the opposite. What does that mean? And now we were back in that space, where emotions rise quickly, where words carry weight, where even simple things become complicated. Defensiveness stepped in. Support turned protective. Voices lifted. And once again, everything that had been pushed down came back up. From the outside, it didn't make sense. How could something so beautiful become so heavy? But the truth is, this happens more often than people realize. Because big moments don't just bring joy. They test relationships. They reveal cracks. They show who's truly aligned and who's quietly struggling. Through all of this, one choice stood out: peace. Choosing to step back, to protect energy, to focus on what matters most. And sometimes, that's the strongest decision someone can make. Not to fight, not to prove a point, but to step away and hold onto their happiness. Now the question remains: what happens next? Does time heal this? Do conversations bring clarity? Or has something deeper shifted? Something that won't easily return to what it was? Because not all changes are loud. Some are quiet, permanent, and felt long after the moment passes. Here's the truth. What we see is never the full story. Not even close. Behind every smile, there's context. Behind every post, there's reality. Behind every perfect moment, there's something we don't see. And maybe that's what makes this story so powerful. Not the drama, not the speculation, but the reminder that even in the most beautiful moments, life is still complicated, emotions are still real, and relationships still need care. So now I want to ask you something, not just about this story, but about your own life. Have you ever had a moment that was supposed to be happy, but felt heavy instead? Have you ever shared something important and didn't get the reaction you hoped for? Have you ever felt like your moment wasn't fully yours? Because if you have, then you understand this story better than anyone. If this touched you, if you felt something while listening, don't just move on. Take a second, reflect, and share your thoughts. Do you think this was just a misunderstanding, or something deeper that's been building for years? Drop your perspective below, because your voice matters. And conversations like this, they don't end here. This story, it's not over, not even close. And what comes next might reveal even more than what we've already seen. So stay aware, stay curious, and most importantly, stay real. Because behind every headline, there's always a human story waiting to be understood.